Welcome to Worthy Women Wednesday with Leah Rose. Leah Rose is an amazing overcomer of so much. We'll get more into your story, but Leah has turned her story of overcoming, a drive-by shooting, leaving her to be a quadriplegic, to showing up powerfully as a coach, a coach really specifically for moms, really dealing with their youth and teaching them how to show up powerfully for their families. She's also a speaker and she speaks around the world sharing her story. So I'm really excited to have you here today. Thank you, Leah, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I feel very honored that you invited me to be a part of your show with you. So thank you.
Of course, yes. Okay, so let's go ahead and get right into it. I want to hear more about your story. I've heard some of your story, but I want to make sure my audience know who you are. So really, we usually spend about 2 minutes sharing whatever you feel comfortable about your story, and then we move on to sharing how you're showing up in the world right now. How does it sound?
Sounds great. Yeah. So I think it'd be best then just to give a bit of a backstory kind of leading up to when I was shot and kind of what I'm doing now. So it makes the most sense to everyone and they understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. So yeah, I grew up just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia, and honestly, very privileged. I played sports growing up, always super active. I loved really intense physical exercise. So I was in competitive swimming, competitive soccer, and yeah. And, when I got into high school, my sports kind of dwindled a bit. I started smoking weed and drinking. I wasn't like the worst teen, but obviously wasn't the best teenager. And, it was a time when I just kind of started not listening to that inner voice inside and really following my gut, and also just kind of not, being really self-conscious about my appearance and wanting to just, find where I fit in the world and not really knowing what that was and being really sure of how to like stand in my power at that age. And I mean, it's hard when you are that age anyways for anyone, especially when you're trying to figure out who it is that you are and there's hormones and everything like that in the mix of it. So yeah, and I wasn't too troubled then, but I think that was the beginning of when things kind of started to turn for me. Instead of focusing on those things that I really loved that brought me so much joy, like, focusing more on competitive soccer and my schooling, it just all kind of started to slip a little bit. I fell a year behind in high school and then managed to kind of like prove to my parents that I could graduate on time, and I had to go to summer school and do these things. But I did it and I ended up graduating with honors. But, I had boyfriends in high school. I was always the type that always had boyfriends. And right when I was leaving high school, I was in a relationship that was pretty toxic. It was honestly for both of us on both ends. I'm no angel here, but it was fairly toxic. We would drink and he would do hard drugs and I'd get really upset. And at the time, I was really against, the hard drugs, especially like cocaine and things like that. And, I'd kind of feel like I'd see him, especially when he was partying and he'd leave me at parties or he'd be hitting on other girls. And I really started to like I almost like devalued myself and based my value on that, when like really I should have listened again to that inner voice and left something instead of staying in it, and just slowly over time not realizing kind of what that was doing to me, maybe mentally, being like, oh, I'm strong, and then getting in these super crazy blow up fights. And then, it was like this roller coaster right into early adulthood that I was in this relationship where I was standing up for myself in a way, but I really wasn't at the core of it, because I really let what was going on in that relationship, looking back, like play into a lot of my decisions that was going on at the time. And,
Wow.
you know, eventually it was this thing where I was like, I was starting to get more fit again, and I'd like dye my hair blonde, and I noticed I was getting, a bit more attention. And then that's when I felt confident enough to leave the relationship. But it wasn't coming from a place of truly valuing myself. It was still based on like what the attention I was getting, right? So it's kind of like I had this false sense of just worth, right? Like really where it was coming from, and just being lost in that. So we broke up, and I was working downtown at the time in Vancouver, and I was meeting all different kinds of people, new people. I was working, yeah, just meeting friends, like going out to the bars and clubs, and at the time I should have been probably really focused, looking back, like on myself, and really aligning back with my core values and what really brought me to happiness. But instead it was like I just kind of shoved that behind me and really just wanted to fill my time with partying. And then I started getting into hard drugs, doing cocaine and ecstasy a lot, and going out every single weekend, and being promiscuous, and hurting myself really, and hurting other people in the process, and not a time that I was proud of at all. And then I ended up going away for a weekend with guys I didn't really know all too well, and at the end of the weekend we hopped in the vehicle to come home, and our vehicle was surrounded by masked gunmen. And about 6 weeks before that, I remember yelling out to God, like, you got to give me something to work with here. Like, I don't really know what I want. And I really, I was calling out. I wanted to find something that fulfilled me and, brought me true happiness. But like the partying, it's so surface level that it wasn't really, obviously, it was like a fix, right? Because I didn't want to be alone, but it wasn't really bringing true joy, and we all know that, right? And in the moment that I got shot, I thought about that 6 weeks ago, of that thought process of yelling out to God and thinking that, and then being like, oh my gosh, this is not what I meant. Like, this is not what I meant, God. But in a roundabout way, and it was hard to really admit at first, and to see it is kind of what I needed to change my path, and to really understand my purpose, to be doing what I'm doing today. And it gave me a lot of time. Obviously, I was basically in the beginning just a motionless body with a soul, with a totally sound mind, to think like, I really started to understand the mind body connection. And I really started to also think about like my past, and where did this really all stem from. And it was a really dark road for a while, a lot of hiccups. My doctor later, when I was a lot healthier, was like, anything that could have gone wrong did go wrong with you. Basically, it was just one thing after the next. And then finally getting healthy enough and getting out of the hospital, and then, going to school after that, and just, making these goals. But I always looked back and was like, what? Like, it wasn't just a decision that one weekend to go away. It was like a series of decisions that kind of was my life that led to that point and that happening. And a lot of that was going back to high school in those days, truly not listening at a time when we're so influenced by our peers, not knowing how to stand strong in what mattered to me and my own opinions. I was such a people pleaser, and it's still something I kind of work on today. But really taking a good look at, like, that's where I see the road kind of turn for so many people. And my aunts would say to me, or they said recently, like, yeah, you were like a little kid. I was like a little tomboy, rah, 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 when I was little, and in elementary school. And they're like, and then the next time we saw you, like, grew up. It's like all of a sudden you were just this mature little adult,
Yeah.
just overnight,
Wow.
just like transition into that. And it was, so much was again based on like what I thought my peers thought of me and their opinions. And yeah, so then leading up today, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I've chosen to do this work because I've always wanted to turn my situation into something powerful and accident happening to me than just like this being rest of my life, I need to be able to serve others in some sort of way. And yeah, this is where I'm at.
So incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for sharing like the backstory of that too, because exactly, like it wasn't just that moment in that car where you were getting shot at, that was the one bad decision slash, quote unquote bad decision. It was is the thoughts that like led up to that. It was the beliefs that you had that led up to that. And it's so important. It's amazing to hear you even be able to say like, you didn't share much of your recovery journey of what the hospital was like. You shared like your powerful journey of like figuring out who you were again and why those were your choices, because it's so important to look back at that. But even in that moment of so much pain and hurt, physically as well, like you chose to look through that and figure out the why. So thank you for sharing that part as well. I didn't know your back end of this story, so thank you.
You're welcome.
So even like diving deep into that, and I know that this is what you're passionate about is serving youth. Yeah, it is such a pivotal moment to show up for yourself. And so often like we don't necessarily have mentors slash people in our lives that are willing to have the hard conversations or willing to take a stand for us. And so I'm curious, like as you're growing up, who were the people in your life that you looked up to, positively and maybe negatively? Like, or did you have your parents around, or did you have that connection with them, or what did that look like?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's why I said like I grew up with really like even though my parents divorced when I was 7 years old, they were both very heavily active in my life. My dad coached my soccer and things like that, but they're also very polar opposites in the way that they parented. So I think that was, kind of hard. Like I learned to almost like manipulate when I was younger of like, okay, I know I can do this at one parent's house and maybe the other I can't. And, like, yeah, I learned to kind of know what I could get away with each parent at a younger age. And then I always had like, my first boyfriend was quite a bit older than me too. So, I think like a part of that, like, and it wasn't a decision on my own. I don't blame anything on anybody else, but it was like I always just wanted to be so much more mature and older and hang out with older people. Like, I guess it was all this sort of like, yeah, it just stemmed from insecurities within myself of wanting to like be above in some sort of way. And it's funny because I don't think a lot of people would actually get that from me, like looking at me, but deep down, that's what it was. I wanted to have some sort of like social status
Yeah.
in high school. So it was like I always hung out with people that were older than me, but also like was a people pleaser in that. And by being a people pleaser, it was almost like validated, like, okay, I got invited out places. And,
Yeah.
I was always the one really like in my friends, if there was ever arguments, like I was the one in the middle mediating. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed listening to people and listening both sides. That's probably what helps with what I'm doing today. And I know I love what I'm doing, but um, yeah, that's kind of, I think, part of where things went wrong for me is just being that people pleaser and wanting to. There's probably more depth to it, but simply just wanting to fit in.
Because I wonder too, because I can relate to that. Like I, yes, wanted to have that level of status slash like always had older friends. But I looking back now for me, what I realized like that was just a coping mechanism for me because I was going through a lot of painful past experiences with my childhood abuse. But I never wanted to get close to people, so I would always have lots of friends, not close friends, but like I would be in the different friend group. Did you notice that at all in your life? Because I think it's sometimes important to recognize these signs of, and this is also because you work with moms, like also the question is really to notice that in your kids. Like, what are some signs that your kids maybe aren't doing as well as you might think they are?
Yeah, I definitely think like I actually had a couple close, good core friends in high school. and actually still have them to this day. I was always really good with everyone because that's just kind of like I never wanted to have that sort of drama or beef with people, and I'd always try and help people squash beef, between friend groups. Um, but I mean, I think, yeah, like in your situation, if you notice that your child doesn't have a lot of close friends and is hanging around with different people all the time, then definitely for sure they might be masking something, or are they dating or hanging out with older people all the time? Well, they will just be exposed to more. They just will than they would with their peers and just hanging out with people their own age. And are you asking them what's going on when they're hanging out with these people? And one of the things, I went to a high school that was work at your own pace. So, at a regular high school, you would, and I did end up going to a regular high school when I fell behind. But it was really based on the high school that I was at, because we would go to these large halls and it would be a work area. So I would go into class and you could be working with anyone of any age, and you wouldn't really know that they were a different age. Like, yes, once you talk to them, you would know, but you were exposed to people who were all different ages and older or even younger than you. So going to a high school like that, you would definitely just kind of meet people of all different walks, and you wouldn't know. Like when I went to a regular high school, it was very much like you didn't really hang out with people older than you. It seemed like it was very, you just stuck and people knew you were younger or you were older. Like it was
Yeah.
much more divided. So in a
Yeah.
way, it was nice because I feel like there wasn't as much bullying and things like that at the high school that I went to. Not
Mhm.
that I felt anyways. But the other schools that were sticking to like their own age groups, just a
Yeah.
regular high school, I felt like it was kind of more hardcore.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard of a school like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just the way, like, and you said too, like, ask your kids these questions. Something
Yeah.
else that I wanted to point out, and that you mentioned in your story, that your parents were divorced at 7 years old. They did do a good job co-parenting, those kind of things. But that also, like, is a level of, yeah, like,
It was very
like
hard for
learning
me.
to manipulate different things. And I'm not saying this is in your case, but what would you share to maybe the audience who have gone through a divorce and they're trying to raise their kids the best way possible after that? What would you say? What is like some of the tools that you'd give them?
Well, I mean, definitely in my situation, like my parents did not get along in the beginning. They do now. I was just with my mom and dad on Monday, and they're funny, hilarious now, and they can laugh, and we can all laugh at things, from way back when and silly stuff. But when they broke up, it was bad, and I saw a lot of yelling and screaming and like very intense emotions. And I don't even remember this, but my parents said, and I guess it was something I blocked out because I have a pretty sharp memory for things back like when I was 3 years old, which is crazy. But this is something they said. I would just be standing there screaming and crying, saying like, stop fighting, stop fighting.
Yeah.
And I was saying this to my sister the other day, just kind of coming to the realization just recently that like I loved my parents each so much. And it was one of these things where I hated to have to choose. Like I wanted to be together in a home. And like I understand now they're two very different people and why it didn't work out. And sometimes things don't work out. But when you're 7 years old, you don't understand that. And I had such a hard time of like, do I go to mom's house or do I go to dad's house? And I remember my mom would sometimes say things like, did your dad say this? Or like, did your dad say that? Right. Or my mom would say, or my dad would say, did your mom say this? Vice versa, asking. And I learned to lie. Like I lied to them because I just didn't want there to be drama.
Yeah.
And I just
Wow.
wanted the
Yeah, the
peace.
manipulation and lying.
Yeah. And that's why so I'm like, yeah, I said to my sister, I would lie when I was younger. And I learned to almost make these white lies so that people would just kind of get along, which
Yeah.
wasn't the right way. And my parents didn't even realize, I think, what they were doing at the time, or that it really affected me that much.
Yeah.
Um, but it did, like it definitely did. And then I kind of, that's how I kept the peace. And like, even when people would say, like my parents said they'd find me in a room crying when I was really young, and they'd be like, what's wrong? And I'd be like, nothing. Like I just learned to minimize everything, even if I was crying, and like, she doesn't want to talk about it. And they even got me to go to counseling, but I was just kind of like, no, I'm fine. So it's like I learned to not validate, and just to push it down, because I felt like the chaos around me was already too much, that I didn't want to bring more to it.
Yeah. So that's so interesting, and so obviously that probably showed up in your adult like life now too, right? And so like,
Right.
where did that show up, and how have you worked through that? Because I know a lot of our audience can relate to, yeah, the mask for one, and just the little white lies, just like saying that you're okay when you're not, because so oftentimes we're taught to actually just
Mhm.
move on, just to show like just don't talk about it, move on. So how is
Yeah.
that showing up in your life, and how are you dealing with it?
So, I mean, I guess 1 through high school, I wasn't really dealing with it. That's, again, what kind of led me down, added to leading me down the path that I went down. But I think once my accident happened, it was like, and yeah, my parents argued again because there was big life decisions they had to make for me. And finally, it kind of was all clicking for me and making sense, that I just repressed a lot of those emotions. And I finally decided in 2016 to go to counseling. I did a type called EMDR, and just it took a lot of time for me to just, even like actually a couple of years for me to open up and kind of weave through with my counselor and talk about how that played a role in all my decision making, and just not feeling validated. And it was something that was like almost so simple, but she just helped me kind of pick apart what it was, kind of yeah, like just break it all down. And then finally one day I just had this aha moment of like, this is what was going on. But I knew after my accident, I was like, this is my opportunity. Like I need to deal with what was going on in my life. Like I don't ever want these things to continue. I realized that these patterns were happening in my life. And on some level they still probably kind of do, but I'm very aware of it. And it's just bringing the awareness around it, kind of like that, those
Mhm.
shadows, those bits about you, right, that are deep within. And finally, when you release and can come to that understanding yourself, then you can be so aware of it when it does come up.
Yeah, when it does come up, because again, like you said earlier, it's like the people pleasing that still shows up. Okay, how do you deal with it? Because
Yeah.
also like some of these things, and some of like our audience might recognize like the word like trigger. Like some of these things are like triggers that come up, right? So either memories or just things that come up. And for me, what I've realized about triggers is just that they're actually amazing opportunities to learn and to grow. And so I'm curious, like if you felt the same, because what I'm hearing you say is that like every opportunity, like no matter how painful that was, like to go through your accident, no matter how painful it was with your parents' divorce, like you chose to later on in life look at how did that happen? Why is that still showing up in my life? And so
Yeah.
it's similar to triggers.
Yeah, and I just really got into like asking why and wanting to know more and diving deep. It's like I knew that I had focused so much on the outer world for so long, and um, my relationships and support from other people did feel quite strong. And I was like, I need to work on the relationship with myself. Like it's me. And I really learned that, like I was saying earlier, with like the mind body connection, when I was felt disconnected from my body, and it was just me in my head and no physical movement. I was like, oh my goodness, it's just me and myself now. Like I got to deal
Yeah.
with it, right? And it's been so powerful to work on personal development, and truly, and it's always going to be a process, but like the more I felt like I wasn't dealing with things, the more uncomfortable these feelings became and were getting in my life. And another thing was like, I didn't like dealing with confrontation again, the people pleasing. So I've been able to work through like the anxiety around that and
Yeah.
speak truth and feel good about it. Like, this is the way it is. This is the way I feel. And, or just saying no to things. I was always a yes man when it came to work and things. And it's learning that it's okay to decline things and not to actually hold like guilt with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
I
so
feel
huge.
guilty about everything.
It's like for one to like recognize it, like see what's coming up for you, and see what
Yeah,
that where that is and how you can move forward. Because the guilt and the shame, like why? Like where? I love that question. You always ask yourself why.
yeah,
It doesn't just like come out of nowhere. Like and if you try to push it back down, because oftentimes when those painful moments come up, when those triggers happen, we're like, oh, keep pushing it down, keep pushing it down, but what we resist persists and it shows up again, right?
yeah, to work with it and not let it be such like a, oh, you kind of stumbled there. I think it's a
Are you there?
connection.
There you are. I think you're back.
Okay, good. Yeah, so it just doesn't sting so much when certain things happen, and you learn to work with it and go, okay, this now the awareness is there. Is this in this moment going to be an opportunity for me to practice what it is that I can work on, that area that's maybe not such a strong suit for myself, that I can actually go, okay, and not feel that anxiety around it. Really, it's just minimizing it and working with it.
Yeah, exactly. And also I want to kind of go back a little bit just about your story of after your recovery from your
Yep.
gunshot wounds and everything and what that led to, because I really want our audience to know it's like how much you went through and how much you've overcome, because it's inspiring to me to just like learn from you and hear from you. And I think it'd be really important for us to hear like what that recovery process was like and what worked and what didn't work in that process. Like, maybe the victim mentality that it was easily probably accessible for you to get into after that. Those kind of things.
Well, it's crazy. I knew right away. I mean, I spent 3 weeks in ICU, and when I was in ICU, I was on morphine and all these painkillers, and I think they might have even put me on antipsychotics in terms of like just like how like frightening the experience was. But I was like tripping. So like those first 3 weeks were just like crazy in ICU. And I cried every single day for a few months. It's just,
Did you remember the accident, by the way? Like, did you
I,
remember the whole?
I remember the whole thing. Yeah. It's crazy. Like I can talk about the accident because I remember, and I remember like my thoughts, like, God, no, this isn't what I mean, when I was like slumped over in the vehicle. The hardest part was like waking up the next day out of a massive surgery and then going like, what does this mean? Like, am I gonna heal? Um, and I remember lying on the hospital bed and they had me upright because like it's a very common once you're not moving, and of course not my lungs, I couldn't cough on my own anymore. So, and I still can't, like I have my diaphragm muscles, but I still can't cough on my own. But right away they sit you up. And I remember sitting there and I almost felt like I was standing. And then I looked down, like I was kind of coming to, just so drowsy. And my legs were out in front of me. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like I was so confused. I thought I was standing, my legs, like I had all this phantom feeling. I was like, oh my gosh. I woke up with a tube in my mouth. I couldn't communicate except for a spelling board. And like right away, I was like, who did this? Like, how did this happen? Like, I'm so confused. It was in summer and it was so hot. And I felt like an extra couple 100 pounds were on me because I couldn't really, it was just my head moving, like
Yeah.
nothing could move. And I felt like all this weight. And then, so those first couple weeks were bad. There was constant bouts of pneumonia. I got it right away. It happened. C. diff, which can kill the elderly typically.
When did they tell you though that you wouldn't be able to use the rest of your limbs? Did they tell you that right away, or how does that?
Well, the part for me that I was like, oh, like I'm thinking in my head, I'm screwed, is I was in the hospital right away, right after being rushed in the ambulance to the hospital. They're like, wiggle this, move this. And I had taken lifeguarding when I was younger, and I knew about spinal cord injuries because of diving. People get them and learning all about them. And I was just like, no, I knew immediately that I
Yeah,
was paralyzed, but I didn't know what that meant for like how long, right? I didn't know what if it was going to be forever. Like, was there? I knew there wasn't a cure because I remember hearing about like Superman, right? He had the accident on and I just remember thinking like, okay, like, but what does this mean for me? And then I got educated so much more on the types of spinal cord injury. Like I learned so much about medicine that I never probably would have learned if I wasn't in the hospital. And I got meningitis in my lungs. I ended up getting a flesh eating disease because the hardware in my neck got infected. They had to do another massive surgery about 4 months later. Um, and it's interesting because the doctors were like, okay, we're going to have to do another muscle flap. We're going to have to take your whole lat muscle to cover like this huge open wound on your back. And to me, I was like, no. And right away, because I was waiting to get into rehabilitation, and my mom was like, oh my gosh, everyone. But in me, I was like, no, I knew something was wrong for a while. And finally, once they figured that out, I was like, now I can start getting better. I didn't eat for 5.5 months, which was like torture.
yeah,
Not even
yeah.
water. It was so dry. And just like
Mhm.
imagine not even being able to drink water or anything. And then finally I was just like, food. Like it was the little things in life that you just
Yeah,
appreciate. Like I started to appreciate so much as each little thing started coming back for me. And I realized how hard, like one of the points I wanted to make too is like my friends, they came and brought like these poster boards of pictures of growing up, and I had them all around my room. And I remember looking up at them and thinking like, I was insecure about my body then, and like how could I've and it made me so sad. I'm like, how did I not like my body that much? It made me so sad. And I'm like, my body has fought so hard to keep me alive and fight. And literally, there was a day when doctors came in, and it was like each little organ system. My lungs weren't doing good. It seemed like my kidneys were starting to shut down. It was a lineup of doctors this one morning, and a girlfriend was there with me, and we just hugged each other and cried after they all finished their rounds in the hospital. And I realized like every little bit of who you are and the systems that make you up in your body physically, they're so precious. And as each one of them came back and was coming back, I was like, how could I have been so hard on myself? Like I have a body that's kick ass in the way that it's like fighting to keep me
yeah,
alive.
yeah.
Like,
Wow.
you know?
Mhm.
So
Wow. Makes me appreciate so much, yeah, so much. And what I love about you sharing your story is that, yeah, sometimes it does take those accidents and those things to learn that. And my hope for my like the audience right now is that you get to realize that right now in this
yeah,
message. So grateful for our bodies and the movement and the little things. And so if you could just like share with the audience right now, like if there someone is here just like hating on their bodies, whether it's they want to gain weight, they want to lose weight, they want whatever it is, something else, right? Grass is greener on the other side. Like, can you just share with our audience just a little message of support?
honestly, just like thank your body and love your body for everything that it does for you every day. If there's a part of your body that you're like, for me, it was always my stomach. And the crazy thing is, right before my accident, I was finally starting to get abs. And now it's like I just have like a belly because of my muscles aren't innervated anymore. I can't flex them. But I'm like, whatever, like honestly, just give love to those areas of your body that it's like, oh, you don't like your butt or you don't like your legs. I mean, there's always going to be things that we're wanting to perfect about ourselves, but it's like you were given this body to, and it's like just amazing that just even a fully functioning body, what it can do for you. Give love to those areas and appreciate, like, I think, and then sometimes you can actually see the change in your body once you're starting to just like give love on those areas. Like,
Yeah.
look in the mirror, stand in like a bikini, look at yourself and just love yourself.
Yeah.
Like, tell yourself you're amazing. Do those things and be like, dang, you got it. Just
Right.
love yourself.
Yeah, so messages everyone after this show should absolutely go put on a bikini and just freaking love your body, right?
Dance around, dance to music you love, and just like
Yeah.
give love to those areas. Okay, there's always things we want to be working on. Sure, that's totally fine. Progress in life is awesome. That's a great thing. But like, give love to those areas first. Look at your body. There was a guy who owned a gym here before. I love him whenever I see him in town. He sold the gym now, but when I was working out there before, he's like, think of your body, like love your body. Think of it sculpting it like it's artwork,
Yeah.
melting the fat away. Just love
So awesome.
your body. It's sculpting your own body, right? Like you're working.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love
So
your body
powerful. Yeah, I love that. I mean, like you just said, like sometimes these things that we hold on to about things that we hate, there's no way to
in that area.
release that and to actually see improvement until you truly love yourself from the inside out. So thank you for sharing that message. And another like question I'm just curious about is that yeah, those are really hard days. Like you said, like something was always attacking you, different parts of your body. And a post that I love that you shared recently was just owning and loving like every part of your body and like the tubes that are tied to you and just like letting go of what your expectation was of how you should be looking. And can you share that story of going out and being embarrassed about the cords that are attached to your body? I don't want to give it away.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's okay. So I have an indwelling catheter. It goes in through my stomach into my bladder. It's always in my body. And one day I was wearing pants. Wasn't really paying attention, and it feeds down into a leg bag on my leg. So in the day I can kind of go out, it can fill up. I don't have to keep going to a bathroom to do in and out catheters. Kind of lets me be a little bit more independent for more hours of the day, but I need help with emptying it. So I look down and I see it like bulging, like right there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was going to go do like my Wim Hof breathing to like, calm down, or like not even calm down, but just kind of get in the zone, and kind of almost like do a meditation. And I was going to go do that, but there's this little area near the high school that I'm at, or at a nearby high school that has like a field. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to go there because there's kids at the skate park and like, what are they going to think? And I was like, and then I thought of like my whole story. And I'm like, okay, for one, I'm not going to worry about what kids in high school, one, are going to think, because like that is like the whole story of my life, of worrying about what other people think. And it doesn't really matter. They have no clue what's happened to me, what I've had to fight through all these years. And I'm not going to be like, so what? Yeah, that maybe that's not like the nicest thing to look at, but it's also like how it served my body. Like I wouldn't be alive if they hadn't invented something like that to keep me alive.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be ashamed of it. It like has helped me. I'm not going to look at that and go, I mean, it's not ideal, obviously, and I would like to wear pants to cover it up most of the time, or a skirt, whatever it is. But it's also like I could have very easily at the beginning of my accident, if I was out somewhere that happened, I would have felt so embarrassed and like probably cried because of frustration and embarrassment. And I was like, hey, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not going to go there. With how far I've come, it is what it is. Like people can think what they want. And that's another thing. Like people can think whatever they want about you. They don't know your journey, the things that you've been through, the amazing person that you are to become who you are today, and even just be who you are in that moment. Like people could always think what they want, or they may not think anything at all. So
Yeah.
don't worry about their story and what they're thinking. Just worry about yourself.
So true.
Yeah.
Because you know what's so interesting about that is because when you post that picture, I was like, oh, that's her leg. Like, didn't even notice anything. And I had to read the post to really see what it was. And so it's so interesting because we do this all the time. Like, we make up what we think other people are thinking about us before we like, and for one, it doesn't matter what they're thinking. Two,
Yeah.
like we make it up before we even are able to show up powerfully for ourselves. We beat ourselves down so much so that we don't go out there, we don't go show ourselves, we don't go to their breathing classes, we don't go do the things that are amazing for us.
That we
Because we're
feel
too busy.
good.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
we're too busy like beating up on ourselves because we are our own worst enemy. And
Yeah.
so like speaking about your like journey of showing up and going through your healing journey, you also decided to take it to the next level and become a coach and speaker. And so can you share about how you decided to do that and what that journey's been like and who you're showing up for now?
So yeah, it's kind of just been in the last year, definitely really honed in on it last summer. Tara, who both you and I know, being our business coach, I worked with her at Joey's years ago when it was downtown Vancouver when she lived in Canada. And I remember over time being like, what is it that she's doing? Like I could kind of would watch her stories and her videos. And then one day last summer, I was like, I knew pretty well what I wanted to be doing, even though I had done the accounting, which was great. I love numbers. I love being able to have that background coming into business. But I was like, no, I really have always wanted to be serving others, serving people in some other sort of way, going bigger than what I was doing at the time. And it kind of just aligned. I guess I messaged her and was like, okay, so what is this that you're doing? And she was like, oh my goodness, like, I'm so glad you were in contact, because she kind of said something to me years ago, you should get your story out there. And I wasn't quite there yet. I felt like I wasn't quite at that place, even though I think we can always have a bit of that in us that we're like, are we there yet? But
Yeah.
um, fine, right? And then finally I was just like, okay, I want to take this on, and just kind of developing a plan with her and the community now, and um, just realizing, okay, I want to work with youth, and specifically like families with youth, moms of youth specifically, because um, just looking back again at my life, like that's where I think for a lot of people, there's a huge fork in the road, and you kind of are going to make a decision one way or the other. You're going to either be standing true to yourself and your values, or you're kind of going to not and ignore. And that's kind of what built this snowball effect for me of going down the wrong path and just being that people pleaser and feeding into that more and more and more and more and more. So that's why I've chosen to be doing what I'm doing and working as a youth and family empowerment coach. And I have my group on Facebook, Hip Moms of Teens.
Yeah, I'm
And
gonna post the link below, guys, because yes, you absolutely get to join. You have so many amazing tools and tips. You talk about all the topics in that group. There's like nothing off limits, which is really important to have someone share like that, and also to realize like no topics are off limits for your kids as well.
no topics for their kid, and no topics for me personally. Like I'm an open book. I've been through so much crazy stuff, even just on a physically vulnerability level, that like no topic is off for me. And even if it's not being talked about in my group, I want to support people even if they private message me. And yeah, and I currently have a coaching program as well. So just yeah, any questions that parents have, how to approach things that are going on, worries that they might have, or even just sharing their wins, what's working. That's why I started this group, to support moms.
Yeah, cheering each other on as well. So I'm gonna post a link below. Every parent should be in that group. So make sure you join, ask questions, feel like, and what you do an amazing job of is also helping parents feel empowered. Like you just said, you're an empowerment coach. Because yeah, that journey can be like, man, like you know, even for me, when I think about having kids, Leah, someday I'm gonna have to message you and be like, hey, what do I do? But I'm
Yeah.
like, you know, you feel like you're prepared, but there's so many new things happening in the world, like different technology, like TikTok and all these
Yes.
things to be aware of. And I know you talk about all these topics of like how to make sure your kids are safe on the internet, how to make sure your kids are
Yeah.
safe in areas. So it's
Gaming.
really
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah, because you didn't you just do a was it a webinar a little while ago
Yeah.
about how to keep
Another one
safe?
again on that because there's a lot of interest on that of just social media, gaming and social media risks for youth, right? Like
Yeah.
we have this whole new cyber world that kind of just this whole online world that's really just taken off, and especially through COVID as well, right? Like it's even in this last year alone, so much has improved with technology, but a lot more has been happening
Yes.
online that we need to keep an eye out for. Um, Not to be totally worried, but the awareness, again, just bringing awareness to things. There was a quote by Tony Robbins, and what was it? It's he says, "Darkness lasts because we don't bring our light to it." So these things need to be talked about.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I love that quote. Absolutely. These things, yeah, we get to talk about these things. And so thank you for taking a stand for yourself, first of all. Like I see you showing up for yourself, taking that checking in on the doctors, checking in on your breathing, meditating, all those things. Because and so I'm just curious, and again, make sure you guys join that group. And I would, on our ending statement, I just wanted to hear like what are like three things that you do every day that are like non-negotiables that support you in showing up powerfully for yourself.
Three things for myself, I would say are just one, I always like checking in on a friend or someone I care about. One thing to kind of serve others in some sort of way, someone I've thought about for a long time, and even family members, like just talking to someone, checking in with someone, see how they're doing, and actively listening, I guess. Another thing is drinking lots of water. That's huge for me. I always try to stay hydrated and just be really up on witnessing my own breath, I guess, bringing so much of it back to that. And also, I have like my faith in Christianity and just focusing on that every day. And one of the biggest things that's just so simple and something I wasn't able to do even for the first 2 months of my accident that I so appreciate is just being out in nature, even if it's just a few minutes and just connecting with that kind of like more of that silent energy of the earth rather than just being focused on my phones. And because a lot of what I'm doing now, pretty much all of it with COVID, has been on online and on computer and on my phone. And I forgot over even the winter months for a little while there just how important it is to get outside and breathe. Doing my breathing exercise, the Wim Hof breathing,
Yeah.
um, so good. So just really taking that time at the beginning of the day to center and focus, check in with myself on all those levels, and then check in with somebody else as well, just one person,
I
just one.
love that so much. So, Leah, thank you so much for being on my show. I always like ending and then making sure our audience know like it's not just Leah, it's not just I who can overcome all of these powerful, painful past experiences. You can do it too. And so I encourage you, whatever you get from this, yeah, whatever you get from this interview, I know we talked about a lot of things. Take something today and implement it tonight. Like, don't wait until tomorrow. See how you can show up for yourself powerfully. And I know there's a lot of tools that Leah gave and inspired you guys. So I know that there's lots of things. If you feel comfortable, comment below. I would love to hear from you guys, and Leah would love to support you as well. But you have any questions? But thank you so much, Leah, for being on. And I cannot wait to see what's next for you and continue to see your journey of just becoming even more of a powerful coach and speaker.
Thank you so much for having me today. And I love what you're doing as well. You have been just like almost just like a change maker in your field, in your area of talking about the things that you do and what you stand for. So I find that really empowering. You stand strong and firm in what it is that you know, what you've been through, and you take that stand for others. So thank you as well.
Thank you. Yes, we get to take our stand. Thank you so much for that as well. And have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Okay, bye.